Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into some of the biggest, oldest, and most fascinating questions that people have ever asked. Yep, we're breaking down the basics of philosophy.
You know those nights when you're just lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering, what is all this for? Why are we here? Is any of this even real? Well, if you've ever had thoughts like that, and let's be honest, who hasn't, then congratulations, you've already been thinking like a philosopher. Because at its heart, that's really all philosophy is. The word literally means love of wisdom. It's basically our human instruction manual for exploring all those deep questions about who we are, what we know, and this wild universe we find ourselves in.
So try not to think of philosophy as some dusty old subject. Think of it more like a toolkit, one that's packed with ways to help you think more clearly. And today, we're going to pop open that toolkit and take a look at 3 of the most important tools inside.
All right, first up, we've got metaphysics. Now this is where we get into the really mind-bending stuff. We're talking about the fundamental nature of reality itself. So, what does that even mean? Well, metaphysics asks questions like, what is real? What is existence? How can we even begin to describe the universe? It's all about the study of being itself.
Let's bring this down to earth for a second. Think about yourself right now. Okay? Got it? Now think about the person you were 5 years ago. Are you actually the same person? I mean, your cells have changed, your thoughts have changed, your memories. So what's the one thing that connects the you from back then to the you of today?
This whole idea leads us to a classic thought experiment called the ship of Theseus. Imagine there's an old wooden ship. Over the years, every single plank gets worn out and is replaced, one by one. So when the last old plank is gone, is it still the same ship? Now think about yourself again. You're kind of like that ship, right? Metaphysics is what helps us wrestle with that puzzle. Okay, from what is real, let's grab our next tool from the kit. This one's called Epistemology, and it's all about knowledge. How do we actually know the things we think we know? Epistemology is fascinating. It digs into how we get information and, maybe more importantly, how we can be sure our beliefs are actually true. It's all about figuring out that tricky line between just believing something and truly knowing it.
It sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? For a long time, the definition of knowledge was a justified, true belief, meaning you believe something, you have a good reason to believe it, and it also happens to be true. Easy enough. Or is it?
Okay, check out this little story. A farmer is worried because he can't find his favorite cow. He looks out into a field and he sees a big black and white shape that looks just like his cow. So he thinks, great, my cow is in the field. And guess what? He's right. The cow is in the field, but it's actually behind a small hill out of sight. That black and white shape he saw? Just a big piece of paper stuck on a fence.
Now think about that for a second. The farmer's belief was true. The cow was there. And his belief was justified. He saw what he thought was evidence. But he was only right because of pure luck. So here's the question. Did he actually know the cow was there? This is what epistemology does. It makes us really second-guess what it means to know anything at all. Okay, so we've looked at what's real and what's true. Now let's turn to a different kind of question. What is right? This brings us to our third and final tool for today, ethics. This is all about morality. And ethics isn't just about some big abstract rules handed down from on high. Nope. It's about the choices you and I make every single day. It's about figuring out what makes an action good or bad and trying to understand how we should live our lives. Now, to really get to the core of ethics, philosophers love to use these tricky dilemmas that push our sense of right and wrong right to the edge. Let's take a look at what is probably the most famous moral puzzle of all time. So, picture this. There's a runaway trolley and it's hurtling down the tracks toward 5 people who are tied up and can't move. You're standing next to a lever. If you pull that lever, the trolley will switch to a different track and those 5 people will be saved. But here's the catch. There is one person on that other track. So, what do? Do you pull the lever? When you boil it down, this is the conflict. On one hand, the math seems simple, right? Saving 5 lives is better than saving 1. That's a pretty logical argument. But on the other hand, if you pull that lever, you are actively choosing to cause someone's death. What does your gut tell you to do? There's no easy answer here, and that's the whole point. So after all these puzzles and paradoxes, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, this is all pretty abstract stuff.
And you're not wrong. But the truth is, these big ideas, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, they aren't just for a classroom.
They're actually the questions we ask ourselves all the time. When you wonder, who am I really? Well, that's metaphysics. When you ask, wait, how do I know that's actually true? That's epistemology. And every time you ask yourself, what's the right thing to do here? Yep, that's ethics. You're already doing philosophy every single day. It all comes back to this one timeless piece of advice, usually credited to the ancient philosopher Socrates. Philosophy is really just the act of examining your own life, your beliefs, your choices, your reality. It's about living with your eyes open. Because in the end, philosophy isn't really about finding all the perfect answers. It's about getting better at asking the right questions. So the real takeaway here is just to stay curious. So I'll leave you with this. What big question are you going to ask today?